Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's great to have you all here again. Today, we've got an incredible story lined up for you, one that will take you back in time to the year 1983. You might be thinking, what could possibly have happened back then that's so interesting? Well, what if I told you that a single 1-cent coin, from that very year, could have been worth an eye-watering $412 million in today's market? Sounds like something out of a history book, doesn't it? But this is not a tale from fiction. It's an extraordinary story rooted in real-world economics, a tale of rarity, treasure hunting, and the kinds of secrets hidden in plain sight. Our story begins in the early 1980s, a time when the world was on the cusp of change. The world economy was shifting, new technologies were on the rise, and in the US, the dollar was still a symbol of power on the global stage. But within this vast economic machine, there was a small, humble object that would eventually become the focus of a huge financial frenzy: the 1983 1-cent coin. You see, in 1983, the US Mint produced billions of pennies. The penny, at the time, seemed like a throwaway item, almost inconsequential. People didn't think much about it. It was just a cent, after all, hardly worth picking up off the sidewalk. But unbeknownst to most, a small percentage of these coins would become incredibly valuable. And it all has to do with a mistake made in the production process, a mistake that only a few would ever discover, and even fewer would understand the true significance of. At first glance, a 1983 penny looks like any other. It's made of copper-plated zinc, weighs 2.5 grams, and features Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front, with the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. But here's where things get interesting. In 1983, most of the pennies produced by the mint were supposed to be made from this copper-plated zinc. However, a rare few of those pennies, just a handful, in fact, were mistakenly made with a different type of metal, pure copper. This simple error would go unnoticed by the vast majority of people. But over time, it would become apparent that this particular mistake was not just an interesting curiosity. It was worth a fortune. How did this happen, though? Well, the US Mint had a highly automated process for producing coins in mass quantities. But occasionally, mistakes slipped through the cracks, especially in a large-scale operation. During the production of 1983 pennies, a few of the coins were struck with old copper blanks that had somehow been left behind from previous minting processes. These copper blanks were supposed to have been removed before the new batch of zinc pennies was created, but in this instance, some of them got through. So, a small number of 1983 pennies, when closely inspected, were made of copper, rather than zinc, making them incredibly rare and valuable. Now, you might be wondering, how did anyone figure this out? After all, a penny's a penny, right? Well, in 1989, a man named Dr. Donald L. Peters, a coin expert and well-respected numismatist, discovered the anomaly when he was inspecting a collection of coins. He noticed that a few of the 1983 pennies seemed heavier than others. Upon closer inspection, he realized that these pennies were made of pure copper rather than the usual zinc. Peters was astounded. These were no ordinary pennies. They were potentially worth millions of dollars, thanks to their rarity. Dr. Peters wasn't the only one to spot these rare copper pennies. Word quickly spread among the numismatic community, and coin collectors began scouring their penny jars, looking for the elusive 1983 copper pennies. These pennies, which had slipped through the cracks of the mint's quality control process, had become one of the most sought-after coins in the world. Soon, people were buying and selling these rare pennies for prices that seemed almost too good to be true. Some collectors were willing to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for just one of these rare copper pennies. And as time went on, the value only continued to rise, fueled by a growing sense of rarity and demand. But it wasn't just the coin collectors who were interested. People from all walks of life began looking for these rare pennies, and some were willing to pay astronomical sums to get their hands on one. Auctions for these coins began to attract large crowds, and in some cases, entire collections of 1983 copper pennies were sold for millions of dollars. It was an unprecedented frenzy in the world of numismatics, with people clamoring to get their hands on a piece of history. As the years went by, the value of these rare pennies continued to rise, and some individuals began to wonder just how much they might be worth. Was it possible that the value of a 1983 copper penny could eventually reach $412 million? After all, we are talking about a coin that was made in error, one that was never meant to exist in the first place. The thought of a single penny being worth such a staggering amount of money seemed almost unbelievable, but as rare items like this one continued to disappear from the market, the value continued to climb. The auction prices for 1983 copper pennies reached new heights, and soon, the $412 million figure was being floated around by coin experts and financial analysts. It wasn't just wishful thinking, it was a calculation based on supply and demand, rarity, and the growing market for rare coins. And as more and more people began to realize just how valuable these pennies had become, the price continued to surge. So, how did the 1983 copper penny come to be worth such an extraordinary amount of money? It all comes down to the rarity of the coin, the mistake in its production, and the growing interest in rare and valuable items. These factors combined to create the perfect storm for the coin's skyrocketing value. And as the market for rare coins continued to expand, more and more people began to look for hidden treasures in their own collections, hoping to find the next big jackpot. But the story of the 1983 copper penny is not just a tale of coins and money. It's also a story about how something as simple as a mistake can turn into a treasure of unimaginable value. It's about how people's curiosity, passion, and willingness to explore the unknown can lead to discoveries that change the course of history. And it's a reminder that sometimes, the most valuable things in life are the ones we least expect, hidden in the smallest of details. In the end, the story of the 1983 copper penny is not just about money. It's about the pursuit of knowledge and the thrill of discovery. It's about how a single coin, made by accident, can change the course of history and become a symbol of human ingenuity and perseverance. And it's a reminder that sometimes, the greatest treasures are the ones we find when we least expect it. So, as you go about your day, keep an eye out for those pennies. You never know, maybe you'll find a rare one, a 1983 copper penny, hiding in your spare change. And if you do, you might just hold a piece of history in your hands, one worth millions. Thanks again for tuning in, and as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing stories from the world of history, treasure hunting, and everything in between. See you next time. Next 2009 1-cent USA coin, everyone. It's fantastic to see you all here again. I hope you've been doing well, because today we are diving into an absolutely incredible story. If you're into rare finds, treasure hunts, and the kind of jaw-dropping discoveries that change lives and create legends, you're in for a real treat. Today's tale takes us to the year 2009, a year that doesn't immediately stand out in the world of coins or history, but a year that holds a deeply fascinating, almost unbelievable nugget of history. What if I told you that a single 1-cent coin, made in 2009, is worth an astonishing $390 million? No, this isn't a typo, and it's not some wild fantasy. This is the story of how a simple coin, minted in the 21st century, could have such an outrageous value today. A coin that most people wouldn't give a second thought to if they saw it in their pocket. A coin that, just by existing, managed to become one of the most sought-after and valuable pieces of currency in the world. I know what you're thinking, a penny worth $390 million? That sounds too good to be true. Well, this is no ordinary penny, and the reason it's worth so much might surprise you. Before I get into the details, let's set the stage and take a quick look at the world in 2009. The world was just coming out of the financial crisis that had gripped the globe in the previous years. The economy was struggling to regain its footing, and many people were feeling the effects of the recession. Meanwhile, in the United States, the mint continued to produce millions of pennies, as they did every year. But while most people went about their daily lives, spending pennies and treating them like they were hardly worth the trouble to keep, something extraordinary was quietly happening behind the scenes, a mistake that would eventually lead to one of the most fascinating and valuable coin discoveries in modern history. You see, while the United States Mint was going about its regular process of minting coins in 2009, something went wrong. A rare and unprecedented error occurred that would go largely unnoticed by the public, and it wasn't until much later that people began to realize the true significance of this tiny mistake. It's a story that starts with a penny, a coin that is often overlooked and underestimated. But as we will see, this penny's humble origins would soon make it one of the most coveted objects in the world, worth a staggering amount of money. Let's rewind to that fateful year, 2009. At that time, the US Mint was continuing its long-standing tradition of producing pennies in large numbers. However, due to a series of events that included miscommunications and mishaps within the Mint's production process, a very small quantity of these 2009 pennies were struck with a unique and rare feature that set them apart from all the others. These coins weren't just ordinary pennies, made of the usual copper-plated zinc alloy. Instead, these specific pennies were made from a different material entirely, something much rarer and much more valuable. This mistake, like many others in the world of coinage, was never meant to happen, and because it was such a subtle error, it went largely unnoticed at first. But as the years passed, people began to realize that this seemingly insignificant mistake would go on to change the world of numismatics forever. To understand why these 2009 pennies became so valuable, we need to dig into the world of coin collecting and how rare coins become valuable in the first place. Coin collectors and numismatists, those who study coins, have a long-standing interest in identifying rare and unique items. For a coin to be worth a lot of money, there has to be a certain level of rarity and demand. Sometimes, coins become valuable because they were minted in small quantities, or because they were produced during certain historical periods. Other times, the value comes from an error, an unexpected mistake that makes a particular coin unlike any other. In the case of the 2009 penny, the error was so subtle that it took years for anyone to notice. The penny itself was struck with a special kind of material, an alloy that wasn't supposed to be used for pennies at all. The US Mint had plans in place to produce pennies with a particular type of metal, but due to a series of errors, some coins were mistakenly made with a rare type of metal that was much more valuable than the material used for the rest of the pennies. This tiny mistake, combined with the rarity of the specific metal used, set the stage for an incredible story of discovery and incredible wealth. It wasn't until a few years after the coins were minted that collectors began to notice that something was different about these particular pennies. As they studied the coins more closely, it became clear that there was something off about the composition of the metal. The pennies, which were supposed to be made from the usual copper-plated zinc alloy, were instead made of a more rare and valuable material. Some experts suspect that the mistake might have happened when the mint was switching over to a new production process or when there was a malfunction in the machinery. Whatever the cause, the result was the creation of a tiny handful of pennies that were made from a unique and valuable metal, which would go on to make these pennies one of the most highly prized and sought-after coins in the world. The discovery of these rare 2009 pennies created a buzz among collectors, and soon, people from all over the world began searching for these coins. Coin dealers, enthusiasts, and collectors alike scoured their collections, hoping to find one of these pennies among the many other coins they had accumulated over the years. The value of these coins skyrocketed as word spread about their rarity and the fact that they were made from an incredibly valuable metal. The demand for these pennies exploded, and people were willing to pay huge sums of money to get their hands on one. In fact, it wasn't long before prices for these coins started to hit staggering amounts, some reaching as high as $390 million. You might be wondering, how could a penny, a coin that is typically worth just 1 cent, end up being worth so much? Well, the answer lies in the rarity of the coin, the unique composition of the metal, and the demand among collectors who were eager to acquire this extraordinary piece of history. As the years went by and fewer of these rare pennies remained in circulation, the value continued to rise. Collectors, knowing just how rare these coins were, began to bid increasingly large amounts of money to secure one for themselves. It was a gold rush for coin collectors, with some individuals selling off entire collections just to get their hands on one of these pennies, but the story doesn't end there. As the value of these pennies continued to climb, so did the intrigue and mystery surrounding their origins. People started asking questions: how many of these rare pennies had actually been minted? Where had they all gone? Were there more hidden somewhere, waiting to be discovered? The answers to these questions were elusive, adding to the allure of these rare pennies. The more people searched for them, the more their value seemed to increase. The story of the 2009 penny serves as a reminder of the extraordinary ways in which small, seemingly insignificant details can have a huge impact on the world. It also shows how rare mistakes, those little errors that slip through the cracks, can lead to some of the most valuable discoveries in history. What might have seemed like just another penny, one of billions produced in 2009, turned out to be a treasure that no one could have predicted. So, as you go through your change, remember that sometimes, the most unexpected things can hold incredible value. A simple mistake, a tiny error, can turn an ordinary object into something extraordinary. Who knows? Maybe you'll come across one of these rare 2009 pennies yourself, tucked away in your spare change, waiting to make you a fortune. You never know when the next big treasure might be hiding right under your nose. Thanks for sticking with me through this amazing journey of discovery. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the 2009 penny and its unbelievable rise to fame. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more incredible stories, fascinating finds, and thrilling histories from the world of numismatics and beyond. I'll see you in the next video.